Hey everyone, and welcome. This is Aaron from AaronWiesinger.com. I want to start off by apologizing. I know it's been a while since I've been able to record a video. I've been super busy and then sick, so yeah, apologies. But today is episode 2 of the illustration overview series, and today we're going to talk about the illustration right here, which is called Snail Love. And this was the second entry that I made into one of Blender Guru's competitions. This one focused on realism. And this was really good for me in particular because while it's great to show off how good a modeler you are, or how well you can texture something, or whatever the technical skill is, but it's also important to be able to tell a story, to get people interested, and to hold somebody's interest in what you've made. So that was sort of my hope in this piece, and my focus was love. And so we've got one snail coming home and just lovingly saying hi to their partner. So yeah, here's the final image. This one is actually 7,000 by, say, 7,000 by 3,000 pixels wide, and yeah, it's so huge because that's one thing that I want to say real quick before I jump into Blender. This did not win the competition. This did not even get a finalist position. This was a nothing. It didn't actually win anything, but what did happen was, whenever I finish an illustration, assuming I'm happy with it, I'll post it on my website and CG Society and DeviantArt. And so somebody from 3D Artist magazine saw this and wanted to run it in the December issue. And so that's why I had to render out this really massive file, and so that it can be printed and look decent. So I'm really excited. It's coming out next month. From now, today is November 10th. Yes, November 10th. So a little under a month from now, it'll be coming out. So look for that in 3D Artist magazine next month. So that was pretty awesome. Anyway, let's jump over into Blender. Okay, here we go. So I know the screen layout looks a little weird this time. This was back when I had 2 monitors set up, and this was on a separate monitor. Anyway, right here we've got, of course, the actual scene that will be rendered. I've got it once again broken down into 3 layers. Layer 1 is simply the, let me maximize this. Layer 1 is just the cement wall with the multiple cameras. You can see I was playing with different angles. And let's jump into wireframe. And now we can see sort of the, if I tab into edit mode, it doesn't, there we go. You can sort of see the lumpy random surface for the pebbly walkway that I wanted. And yeah, there's no point in having all of that detail everywhere. So just had one plane, and it's a very small focus. You know, if we look here, it's only in this little area. So yeah, and also I wanted to sort of litter the scene a bit, since it's very rarely clean where you're walking. I didn't go into super detail mode with this stuff because, you know, if you actually look at the rendered image, there is a cigarette that's right here, but because it's so out of focus, you really can't even see it, and this one is out of focus again, so you can't really see the detail in it. I should say too that one thing I did before I started this was to go out, and because the focus was realism, I took a lot of pictures, and this was just using my camera phone. I don't have my DSLR here. I'm living in South Korea right now, and there's a running trail that I used to go down, and this scene is something that I would see on my run. So there's, this cement wall that's about waist high with pipes coming out of the bottom for drainage, and then that sort of like green, sort of slick, spongy stuff. I don't know what it is exactly, but that's what I was trying to replicate here. And then also I did a bit of, see, there we go, yeah, a bit of sculpting on this wall. Let's see if I can zoom in over here and zoom back out. There we go. So unfortunately some of the detail is lost in the actual render, but I did sculpt in a lot of the cracks and some damage using sculpt mode, and so I tried to keep some of the realism around there, that these don't just come out of perfectly round holes in the wall. So I think that's pretty much it for layer 1. Then of course we've also got some nice flowers that I didn't go too crazy on, but they're there. And of course layer 2, our snails. Now let me take a look. Let's zoom in over here. These both have a fairly simple setup. Let's look at the bottom one here. If we can, whoops, jump out of, there we go. Okay, so yeah, we're in pose mode now, so I can grab some of these joints, or bones rather, and this one controls just the shell and a little bit of the body of it. And then we've got these eye stalks that I can manipulate around here. Yeah, it's a pretty simple setup for the skeleton. Yeah, I didn't really need it to do much. One thing you can see here is in the detail of the snail. It looks very lumpy, and its profile, actually you can see a little bit, I didn't want it to be too intense, but it does actually go up and down. It's not just a flat profile. So let's take a look at why that is. So let me, open this back up. Now pay attention. Let me actually turn off X-ray for this so we can see the body a little better. Okay, so I'm going to select that, and I'll go over some of the noodly bits in the node editor for the material in a few minutes. But so let's take a look. So we've got the armature on there, and then the subdivisions, and these are important because if I just turn that off, you can actually see what it looks like, and that's about the resolution that it's at with no subdivisions with it, or subdivisions turned off. Okay, so sorry, I'm having a hard time not coughing. Alright, so right now I've got the view set at 2, and we can adjust this up and down to make the viewport maybe run a little faster if we want. Turn this up and up. Actually, let me turn this off for now. And turn it up again. Okay, at this point you're not really seeing a big difference because we're not close enough, but you can see if we zoom in, and then one more, the final level is, yeah, it's there's quite a bit of geometry in there. So what do I do after that? Then I slapped on a displacement modifier, and I had already texture painted the snail using reference images, and like I said, I went out and I took pictures of the area that I wanted to actually render the snails in, but I also needed to look up a lot of references through both cgtextures.com and just looking up snails for getting a mental picture of what snails actually look like. I always thought of them as being always very slimy, but quite often they look pretty dry when you get up close to them. Maybe on their stomach they're always, exuding that goo so they can slide around. But yeah, so I needed to have that high resolution so that I could actually make them look that lumpy. And I didn't want to have to go in and sculpt in all those bumps. I mean, that's another option, but I wanted to do it this way because I think it ends up making it easier to work with like a rig. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I did it. So let's turn on the displacement modifier. This will take a second for it to load. Okay, there it is. Now, it's not super high. This is all controlled with the strength value right here. So if I bump this up, then the bumps will come out more. If I drop it down closer to 0, then it goes in less, or it's less noticeable. So we can actually see that it is affecting, if we look at the profile here, it is affecting the geometry. Okay, so I'm going to drop this back down to 1 so I can actually work with this, or 2. You can still, yeah, you can sort of see it. But for the final render, I really like the way the modifiers work. You can have it in the view, look a certain way, and then at actual render time, it's going to be much higher, so it's going to look how I want it to. So, alright. Same thing I did for the shell. This one you can see is actually a much simpler node setup. And we've got the sub-Ds that I need to turn on, or turn up. Okay, and up, and up. Okay, maybe. Yep, there's the final level 4, and it was important, especially for this, because if we take a look at this, I knew that I was going to definitely see this in profile. So a bump map will make it look, if we look right here, a bump map's going to sort of fake it well enough, but if a bump map shows in profile, you're not going to see the sort of up and down ridges of that. You need to have the actual geometry affected by something like a displacement map. Okay, so let's take a look at layer 3. So layer 2 is pretty much, well no, layer 2 has the snails and the benches that I put in here. And the benches are pretty much there to help make sure that I had the lighting right and that it was casting a shadow, because there are some benches that were right along that same area. And okay, finally, let's jump over to layer 3. Here is where I have my particle systems to help with, okay, let's look in the camera view. So right here, I'm going to jump over to the final image and jump back. Okay, so all along here, we have those little like twiggy, stick, dirty things that get stuck in the cracks. And so that is just controlled by this with a particle system attached to it. And I usually keep all my particles on layer 5. Let's see if I can zoom in on those. Okay, yeah, so this little bundle of things is duplicated all along this object. And it is, oh, where is it? Okay, so 10,000 particles, or 10,000 hairs, I guess technically, coming out of this. And if we look down here, the display is set at 1%. If I bump this up to, say, 20%, you start to see a little better idea, but it also makes the viewport chug. So this is one thing, if you're seeing a lot of viewports slow down when you're adding particle systems and you get it set up to basically how you want it to look, come down into display and drop that way down. And I usually operate definitely under 10%, especially if I'm doing a high particle count system. So then I can actually move around and it's not chugging so bad. Same thing for the grass coming from the top. So this one, again, this is at 1%, and there are 30,000 hairs coming out of this. Last time I talked about using the weight paint to control where particles are actually coming out of. This one I was actually a little dumb with, because you can see really the only spot where we're going to see the grass is right in here. But I went so far as to get this whole edge all along here, which is not a good idea. The difference it's going to make is so slight that it's probably you won't notice it at all. But anyway, that was my mistake there. But just like I did before, the red area is the highest influence, and so if I jump out of there with Control Tab over at grass B. Okay, I had grass A and B. Excuse me. Yeah, we've got the object, which is grass B, which is being duplicated along here. And if I take a look at, where is it, vertex groups, okay, I have this longer grass vertex group, which controls the density, which most of the time, unless I'm getting into something more specific, I'll have the density controlled very often with weight paint, just to show where something is going to show and where it's not. Okay, so let's combine these all back together. So 1, 2, and 3. One thing I want to talk about is if we look at layer 2 with the snails, whoops, where'd my snails go? Okay, what is this? This is actually a bone, and we're in pose mode. This is controlling the, this is sort of the root bone. And if I jump over, not layer 5, but here, okay, if we take a look, this is just a mesh object, just edges. There's nothing special about it, just something that I made. And I put it on a separate layer just so I have everything organized a little better. And this is used as a bone shape, or let me see, it's easier if I just show you. So let's jump back over to the camera, grab this, zoom in on that with period on the numpad if you don't know. And okay, jump out of that. And let's take a look at the bone. The custom shape is what we're looking for. So under display, if you look at the specific bone, which this one is called root.0000000, and you can point at a shape. So object that defines custom draw type for this bone. You don't have to leave it at just, you know, the default bone look. That's how you end up getting all these more complicated looking rig setups. And like if I turn this off, okay, that's what the actual bone looks like. Okay, I'm going to undo that. And all right, now back to what it is. So you can create any shape that you want and then have that drive and become the shape that you want it to look like. So when you do that, also make sure, or at least I do, I'm not sure why you might not use this, but make sure to turn on wireframe if it's not already on. And then I think it's just easier to be able to grab this stuff instead of, like, if I turn that off, then I've always got to sort of fight with which bone I'm grabbing, that kind of thing. So let's undo. All right, back to where it is. So we can see here that I've got the composition guides turned on for the thirds. So if you don't know how to do that, make sure you select your camera, go to the camera tab, and then under display, composition guides, you can turn on any of these to sort of help you guide how your shot is going to be composed. And so using rule of thirds, I've got sort of the heads of these guys in that general area. It doesn't have to be exact, but you know, it's sort of a good rule of thumb for where you're going to put things, at least if you're going by thirds. There are other ways of looking at it. So this is my Snail Love illustration. Okay, one quick thing before we go. I'm not going to go into all the detail about this noodly thing going on in the node editor, because I think that would be better saved for a later episode. But I would like to show you a couple things. So right up here we can see a couple image textures that are being controlled by the UV maps that I set up for this. Okay, let's zoom in here. We can see how these red lines are where I've got the seams set up. And let's deselect those, jump out of edit. Okay, so if we go into the node editor, I've got two main image textures that I'm using. The first one up here, let's zoom in, Snail Body Trans 01, and what's our other one? Zoom, Snail Body Bump 03. Okay, so let's jump out of that and down here, and let's change this to UV image editor. Okay, so this is the body trans, and let's take a look at Snail Body Bump 03, and this is the bump map. Now I don't have a color map specifically. I should also mention that this was all used, I had some basic tileable textures that I made and then I painted on using the texture paint mode. So this controls, it sort of controls the color, but the way this works is I've got the bump here, and then this goes through a dodge and then curves, and then goes through an overlay mode, which is overlaid with this sort of orangish color, and then that goes into a diffuse mode, which goes into the mix shader, and you know, it's got all these other steps that it goes through. I also want to point out that it has a translucent element to it, and so yeah, let me see. Alright, so we've got the bump that goes through, then that all controls the color. It ends up, you know, it's not a black and white image, so it goes through and it gets colored. And then the top one, the where is it? Yeah, this one controls where I want transparency or translucency to be. So let's split this screen and have one be the 3D view. Okay, and jump into edit mode, select all these. Okay, so here are all my UVs, and you can see these are the eye stalk UVs. Here along the edge is like all along this part here, and that will control how transparent or how translucent the skin will look. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. This took a long time for me to set up and play with and get the material just right. That's why there's sort of a lot going on. I know there are more complicated setups than this, but yeah, that's what I ended up doing to get this to work. The shell material is significantly less complex. So anyway, let's jump back into the camera mode and finish this up. So layer 1 and 3. So these are the 3 layers all put together and then rendered out. You can see here, yeah, my original entry was at 2820 by 1200 pixels, and then I bumped that up to 7000 for the magazine render. Anyway, this is my illustration, Snail Love. Sorry if it's a bit long-winded today, but I wanted to show you just how I put the illustration together, some of my thoughts behind doing it, and once again, thank you for watching. I hope that this helps. Please go and check out my website, aaronwiesinger.com. Also, I have my CG Society page, DeviantArt, and don't forget to check out the December issue of 3D Artist magazine for the Snail Love illustration. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.